Identify muna natin kung itong mga expression ba na to ay perfect square trinomial o hindi. We have x squared plus 2xy plus y squared. So, this is a perfect square trinomial. Later, I will explain why and how. Next, 4x squared plus 20x plus 25. This is also a perfect square trinomial. X squared plus 5x plus 6. This is not a perfect square trinomial. 9x squared plus 30xy plus 25y squared. This is a perfect square trinomial. And 4x squared plus 2xy plus y squared. This is not a perfect square trinomial. Okay, so how will we know if the given expression is a perfect square trinomial? Paano natin malalaman na perfect square trinomial siya? So, una, ito lang ang mga dapat tandaan. Your first term must be a perfect square and it must be positive. It's always positive. So, tatandaan na yung first term natin dapat perfect square siya. Pag sinabi nating perfect square, of course, we can get its square root. Okay? So, yung first term natin, dapat lagi rin siyang positive. Next, the middle term must be twice the product of first and the last term. So, yung middle term natin, dapat, pag minultiply natin yung first and last term natin, and then tinimes natin siya sa 2, the resulting product must be the middle term. So, yun ang tatandaan. Now, ang sign niya, pwede siyang positive or pwede siyang negative. Depende sa given. Okay. And then next, our last term must be a perfect square. And it must be always positive. So, ang last term natin, just like your first term, dapat perfect square din siya. At it's always positive. So, ang sign nito dapat laging positive. So, to sum it up, the first term and the last term must be a perfect square and the positive term. And then, ang middle term natin, it must be twice the product of first and last term. Okay, let's have an example. So, ito lang din yung kanina. Bakit siya perfect square trinomial? So, x squared plus 2xy plus y squared. So, this is again a perfect square trinomial. Why? So, sabi ko nga, dapat ang first and last term natin ay perfect square and it must be positive. So, as you can see in the given, our first and last term are both positive. And then, so, iti-check natin kung perfect square sila. So, yung first term natin ay perfect square, also our last term o yung third term natin. Now, dapat, pag minultiply natin yung first and last term at tinimes natin siya sa 2, dapat the resulting product must be the middle term. So, 2 times x times y, that is 2xy. And that is our middle term. So, therefore, this is a perfect square trinomial. Next, 4x squared plus 20x plus 25. So, let's see. Let's see if our first term and last term are both perfect squares. So, yung 4x squared, that is 2x. Kasi 2 raised to 2, that is 4. And then x raised to 2, that is x squared. So, 4x squared. And then, 25, we all know that 25 is a perfect square. And that is 5. So, 5 squared is 25. Now, we will multiply the first and the last term, so that is 2x and 5. So, 2 times 2x times 5, so that is 4x times 5, that is 20x. And that makes it a perfect square trinomial. Next, we have x squared plus 5x plus 6. So, let's check. So, our first term is a perfect square. Our last term or third term is not a perfect square. So, 6 is not a perfect square. So, dun pa lang, masasabi natin na hindi na siya perfect square trinomial. So, this is not a perfect square trinomial. Next, number 4. 9x squared plus 30xy plus 25y squared. So, our first term is a perfect square. That is 3x. And then, our third term is a perfect square. That is 5y. And then, we will multiply 3x and 5y. So, twice So we will have 2 times 3x, that is 6x, plus 5y, that is 30xy. And then 4x squared plus 2xy plus y squared. So our first term is a perfect square, that is 2x. Our last term is a perfect square also. And then we will multiply 2x and y and then times 2 pa. So we will now have 2 times 2x is equal to 4x times y, that is 4xy. But as you can see, ang middle term natin dito ay 2xy lang. So this is not a perfect square trinomial. So minsan, yung first and last term natin ay perfect squares, pero pagdating sa middle term, it doesn't satisfy yung condition natin sa middle term that it must be twice the product of your first and last term. So that makes it not a perfect square trinomial. Okay. Now, how to factor perfect square trinomial? So, dapat alam natin kung perfect square trinomial mo na siya. Kasi pag perfect square trinomial siya, alam natin kung paano siya i-factor. So, if you were be given x squared plus 2xy plus y squared, that will become x plus y raised to 2, or simply the quantity of x plus y squared, or the square of x plus y. Alright? Where x is your first term and then your y here is your last term. So, dun lang tayo titingin. Now, take note. Kapag ang trinomial natin o ang perfect square trinomial natin ay x squared plus 2xy, kapag ang middle term natin ay positive, then yung resulting factor niya is positive din. Okay? Pero kapag yan ay negative, yung middle term natin, the resulting factor is negative din or minus. Okay? So, this is now our factored form. So, again, x squared plus 2xy plus y squared, pag yan ang given natin na perfect square trinomial, the factored form is the square of x plus y. And then if it's x squared minus 2xy plus y squared, the factored form is x minus y squared, or the square of x minus y. Let's have an example. So I have here x squared plus 10x plus 25. So dapat ang factored form natin dito ay the square of x plus y. Bakit plus? Kasi ang middle term natin ay plus. So, ito dapat ang makuha natin. So, unang-unang gagawin, i-check natin kung perfect square trinomial mo na siya. Kasi minsan, baka nagpa-factor tayo gamit ang form na to, pero yung ginagawa pala natin ay hindi siya perfect square trinomial. So, itong x plus y na to, or the square of x plus y, ay para lang siya sa mga perfect square trinomials. Tandaan yan. So now, i-check muna natin kung perfect square trinomial, kagaya ng tinuro ko kanina sa activity. So first, dapat perfect square ang first and last term natin. So x and then 5. So they are both perfect squares. And then we will check if the middle term is twice the product of your first and last term. So i-multiply natin yung x and 5 sa 2. So, we will have 2 times x, that is 2x, times 5, that is 10x. And that satisfies our middle term. So, ibig sabihin, pwede natin siyang i-factor using the square of x plus y because the given expression is a perfect square trinomial. So, we can now have the factored form. Just copy the first term, which is x, and copy the last term, which is 5. That's it. As simple as that. Next, I have here 16x squared plus 72x plus 81. So, since ang middle term natin ay positive or plus, therefore, the resulting factor or yung factored form natin will be the square of x plus y. So, plus ulit siya kasi the middle term is plus. So, we will check first if the given expression is a perfect square trinomial. Kasi pag hindi siya perfect square trinomial, we cannot use this form, the square of x plus y. Okay? So, check natin ang first and last term natin kung perfect square kung perfect square sila. So, 16x squared is 4x. That is a perfect square. And 81 is also a perfect square, and that is 9 squared. So, now, let's check the middle term. If it is twice the product of 4x and 9. Okay, so 2 times 4x, that is 8x, times 9, that is 72x, and that satisfies our middle term. Okay, so therefore, the factored form, just copy the first term, which is 4x, and then our last term, which is 9. So the factored form is the square of 4x plus 9, or dalawang binomial siya na 4x plus 9 times 4x plus 9. Okay, next. I have here x squared minus 22x plus 121. So as you can see, the factored form must be x minus y. Bakit? Because our middle term here is minus. So dapat ang factored form nito is square of x minus y. Okay, so before anything else, before you proceed, let's check first if it's a perfect square trinomial. So, check natin yung first and last term kung perfect square. So, for our first term is x squared. So, obviously, it's a perfect square. And our last term is 121, which is 11 squared. Okay? So, therefore, let us now check the middle term. If it's twice the product of your first and last term. So, we will multiply x and 11 times 2. So, 2x times 11, that is 22x. And that satisfies our middle term. So, therefore, we can now proceed to the factored form. Just follow the rule. Okay? So, we will just copy the first term, which is x. And then, the second term, the last term, which is 11. So, our factored form is x minus 11 squared. Next, 25m squared minus 20mn plus 4n squared is equal to the square of x minus y. So again, this is x minus minus because our middle term is minus. Okay? So check first if it's a perfect square trinomial. So again, we need to check kung perfect square trinomial siya. Kasi dun lang natin pwedeng gamitin itong rule na to o form na to. Okay, so check natin yung first term, 25m squared. So that is 5m. That is a perfect square. And then 4n squared, that is 2n. And 2n is a perfect square. 4n squared is a perfect square. And that is the quantity of 2n raised to 2. And then we will get twice the product of your first and last term, which is 5m and 2n. So 2 times 5, that is 10m. Times 2n, that is 20mn. So, our factored form will be, we will just copy the first and last. So, that is 5m and 2n. So, our factored form is the square of 5m minus 2n, or the square of the difference of 5m and 2n.